understand better what heart health is and what, or should I say, who your heart is. Because we have this big thing now about cardiovascular disease, aging, cancer, diabetes, all these threats to our lives, and we tend to forget about just living our lives. Who are we? And at the center of us is a heart. And it's not just an organ that gets transplanted and medicated and operated on, and the moment it stops, you're dead, and you've got to be scared of looking after your heart, because this is good for your heart and this is bad for your heart. Actually, the heart is a very tough thing. You can cut it out of the human body and it carries on beating. The heart can't get cancer. Did you know that? Because the heart cell, once it dies, it dies. So it makes the most of what cells it has left, and they keep beating faithfully inside you. Another thing is that the heart is listening right now. It's listening. You know, you have your brain and your mind and your logic, and it's driven by the left side of your brain. Your language, your motor skills, and how you generally function all comes from the left brain. That's why men are so much better at everything than the women. But when the emotion comes out, it's heartfelt. The tear-jerking, all these things we blame the heart for. But the heart is not stupid. When you really have got something bothering you about your conscience, and you go to bed and you wake up, it's your heart saying, you know, you haven't got the heart to go and fire that person tomorrow. Or suddenly you'll see someone in the street and you'll just want to give them something. That's coming from the heart. You're not thinking about it because there isn't time to think. And heart waves, when you go into the real science of what we call heart math, you will find that the amplitude of heart waves, you know, the actual size, when you measure them, you know, your cardiograph goes like this, but your brain waves go like that. Well, the heart amplitude is far bigger than any other organ in the body. So radiating from the heart, you've got an area like this. Radiating from the brain, you've only got an area about like that. And that's why when you see all these Middle Eastern guru things with the chakras and that, everything comes from a heart chakra. Do we know what chakras are? The spinning wheels of energy. Basically, all these esoteric, mystical questions of faith and that are just about quantum science, mechanics, electronics. And a lot of them are about waves, sound waves, and molecules and matter. So the chakras are basically receptor points where energy can focus and circle and go into various parts of you. And sitting behind most of what we call chakras are glands that create hormones. And hormones communicate with you. You know, you've got the pituitary gland, and it controls the other hormones. Now, if you've got 7 chakras, and behind them all, you've got endocrine glands, what about the heart? Is the heart an endocrine gland? What do you think? Does the heart tell you what to do? Does it tell other parts of the body what to do? Yes, it does. I can see somebody can savvy that. The heart does release hormones into the bloodstream. And one of the most interesting hormones that they've actually discovered that is generated by the heart is oxytocin. I'm sure Dr. Berman and Evan and all of you told you about oxytocin. The hormone, we call it the love hormone, the bonding hormone. Why do we have people here? We have them heart to heart. You have a heart-to-heart talk, don't you? So the heart is now being respected as an endocrine gland. And to back that up even further, you can go through the science and you'll find it creates its own hormones that control the atrium. Top chambers of the heart and the bottom are also controlled by hormones that come from nowhere else but the heart. So it tells things what to do around the body. And the heart can also remember things. You are aware of heart transplants, Dr. Chris Barnard. Did you know that when they put those hearts into different people, that strange things begin to happen? Have you heard the stories about heart transplants and what they do to people? And I've had the privilege now of writing a book with Dr. James Liddell. And we've had to find out all sorts of things about the heart. So today I'm going to share some fascinating information with you. And I just want to introduce something for the future. There will be a book out, A Holistic Guide to a Healthy, Happy Heart. This is the prototype, 165 pages of very, very, very digitally dense material. It's taken us already over a year to prepare this feast of information with you. And none of it is really about clogged arteries or cardiovascular units or worrying about what you eat and what you don't eat. It really isn't. And this talk, the purpose of this talk, and the privilege of being here with a group that's interested in anti-aging, to stay forever young, have a healthy, happy heart. And that means stop worrying about your heart. It's tough. It's very tough. Heart muscle is one of the toughest things there is. And we'll soon see why. The detailed way in which you've been created and the way God has given you all the things to protect your heart are all there. They're all just waiting to be recognized and put into action. It's like, you know, when an inventor comes up to a big machine and he removes the cloak and says, here's the machine, and they switch it on. We have got all the mechanics to look after our heart within us innately. All the antioxidants are inside us. Oh, you didn't know that. Just only after a year writing this book that I discovered that. The most important thing to look after in heart health are what God gave us to look after the heart with. And that is a group of antioxidants we call enzyme-based antioxidants. Who knows what those are? Is it vitamin C? Is it vitamin E? Is it beta-carotene? We fuss so much about what we eat and put into our little mouths we forget that those are what we call secondary antioxidants. They come from food. And here we are feeling inferior to other animals because we can't make enough vitamin C. For sure we can't. We can't convert glucose into ascorbic acid. And Linus Pauling reminds us of that. But it is not the thing that you need as a major antioxidant for your heart. It washes out 3 hours after you take it. The animals that don't make vitamin C, like the monkeys and the fruit bats, have to eat vitamin C all the time, fruit. They eat fruit all day. They're obsessed with it. They need 200 times more vitamin C than we do. Now how about the intelligence that sorted all that out? We made with a substance that in heart health generally, and most doctors are telling us is a bad, dangerous substance. And I will have to write this one on the board because we're all familiar with it. And it's called homocysteine. And how many of you have had your homocysteine levels checked? I hope that's spelled right. Good. Homocysteine. They measure it and they say, your homocysteine levels are bad. It's going to damage your arteries and rip them to pieces, and then you're going to get a clot, and the clot's going to get stuck in the supply to the heart, and then you're going to have a heart attack. Ooh, and then we can all make lots of money out of it. Isn't that right? And then you mustn't eat butter. Remember the old story, you mustn't eat butter, you must eat margarine, and all the cholesterol myths. We've been through that. We've come around full circle to, again, eating butter. But what's that got to do with your homocysteine levels, really? If your homocysteine levels are going up higher and not lower, there's something wrong. Because if these levels are high in you, your inflammation levels are high. Your blood vessels are being irritated and scoured. And, I mean, the inside of a blood vessel, I haven't got a model in, but can you imagine a pot scouring inside your blood vessels? The actual blood cells themselves grind against the sides of your blood vessels. So there's a lot of damage on the blood vessels themselves. But fret not about that. Rather fret about this one. This bad thing will lower, the levels will lower when you add some key nutrients here. It will break down into the most amazing enzyme-based antioxidant and detoxifier the human body has within it. And none of us are using. It's like having, you know, this renter-maid, a whole van load full of domestics coming into your house with all their scrubbing brushes. It's like having that on duty all the time. And we put them all to sleep. We let them sleep in the bus. We're not letting them out. Your most faithful servant is a product that's made out of amino acids. Now when you eat protein, and of course now we're all allowed to eat protein, and lots of fat, we get high levels of methionine. That is a group of amino acids that converts to another amino acid. Your homocysteine levels are like a teapot. You put tea in and you pour the tea out into cups. It's a transient amino acid. Now when you've got enough vitamin B6, Dr. Berman will be proud of me now, and Dr. England, and Mrs. Wright. My other friend is Jonathan Wright, and he is a wonderful health guru who also talks about these things in health class. B12. What's number 3 in the grand trio? Think of rabbits, something green. Folate. It's grouped with the B's, but these are enzymes, eh? We can talk a lot about enzymes now. And what are enzymes? They basically bring about chemical reactions. They change. It's like me. I'm an enzyme. I'm going to bring out a reaction from here. And I'm not going to be changed myself. Now you're all sitting like this with doom faces. Well, I'm a shit stirrer. Now you'll stop laughing. I've brought about a reaction without changing myself. B vitamins don't change. They race around the place, causing enzyme reactions to take place. So they attack the homocysteine, particularly vitamin B6. And they convert it into our best friend, the whole bus full of maids that come and clean up after us. Glutathione. Of course you all knew that. You know what these are called? The glutes. Eh? Glutes are muscles. Glutamic acid comes from proteins, basically muscle flesh that we eat. And for vegetarians, from pulses and grains and seeds and nuts. L-glutamine is the amino acid that we take as a supplement when we feel we've got irritable bowel and colon disease. We take L-glutamine. But glutamate and glutamine is just another amino acid. And when homocysteine and methionine are released by this, other amino acids get together. And one of them is called glutamine. The other one is cysteine, and I think the other one, there are quite a few of them, but the major one is glutamine and cysteine. Right? Then we get glutathione, the name of the cleaning maid. Or glutathione. There are different ways of spelling it, glutathione or glutathione, whatever you prefer. Professor Serpentine used to talk about glutathione. And he instructed James Liddell, the doctor that I wrote the book with, and myself, over 16 years ago, 20 years ago, about this important process. And then it all got forgotten about. But glutathione is an enzymatic antioxidant. Now what happens in the body is that your blood cells and oxidative stress cause things to stick to blood cells. Free radical damage is where you have things sticking to other things. And glutathione comes along and it pulls off all the free radical damage like that, and it keeps cells clean. It can dispose of it itself because it links up to other enzymatic antioxidants that we make. Once we finish making this one, we also make coenzyme Q10. Did you know that you make your own coenzyme Q10? I didn't know. I used to buy it for my husband. Now he makes it himself. Why does he make it himself? Because we break this little thing down further by adding a mineral, a simple little mineral that you need to make another antioxidant. Not only are we going to now make Q10, we're also going to make SAMe, S-adenyl SAMe, methyl SAMe, S-adenosyl methionine. So you can hear it comes from methionine, but we call it SAMe for short. And we supplement people who are depressed. It runs the nervous system. When you're depressed and you're Alzheimer's and you're shaking, you're quaking, I don't see any wheelchairs or walking sticks here, so you're all doing pretty well. But generally, to maintain the nervous system and your general sense of well-being, you take SAMe. So we always call it SAMe. And a little, doesn't get a big. And then we also make another one, which is called superoxydismutase. That is an antioxidant that, easy to remember, you just tell the free radicals to sod off. To put sod. But we're not going to make SAMe unless we add something here. So far, all you've got on your shopping list are B6, B12, and folic acid. And then you're going to get glutathione, which is going to strip out all the free radical damage that takes part as a result of natural metabolism. We're producing free radicals right now. We're not submitted to any pollutants. There's no toxic junk food around. There's no radio waves, but you're busy making free radicals right now. And glutathione can take care of it. If glutathione is fallen fast asleep, you need a lot of fish oils, and you need a lot of vitamin C, and a lot of the secondary antioxidants. Those come to play at a later stage when we look at the whole cardiovascular system and the blood vessels. But now we're just talking about general body maintenance. This is the cleaning crew. SAMe is fantastic, but you will not get these B vitamins to even produce glutathione until you put something else in that little box. Stop grinning, Jimmy, you know what it is. It's an alkaline mineral, and unless you have it present, you cannot release any of the B vitamin enzymes. So you can't just say B6 is going to release glutathione. As we found in the research that we've done, you can't do it. And that's why it's not working, because something is missing. Now this is such an important mineral that we've all forgotten about, that in the meantime, many of us have become diabetic. We've got high blood pressure. We've got high cholesterol. Because we're missing this one single mineral. And our salt sodium levels have gone up too high. Because we are not acknowledging the necessity for one simple mineral. Oh, I've got you. 20 years ago, calcium and magnesium. When you put magnesium here, bingo, everything starts working. Hallelujah. Now we've got Q10, and you know what that costs, eh? It costs about 100 rand a month. SAMe, 100 or 200 rand a month, yeah. Superoxydismutase, we don't even buy it separately. Compounding artists like me, I call them artists, Neil Berman, he's an artist. He's talented, he's gifted, he's inspired. He puts them into his heart muties. And if you live only on his muties, you're okay, you don't have to listen to me. All these things are in here as well. But if you actually like me, or a DIY specialist, you want to make all these things yourself. You can, but you need magnesium. And you can't get it from our original calcium and magnesium formula. This is done on the old-fashioned one of, this is right, 3 calcium to 1 magnesium. You all know how to prevent arthritis, osteoporosis and everything with calcium and magnesium. And we have, haven't we? We've reversed osteoporosis with this formula. But we tend to forget about the partner of calcium is magnesium. And a lot of doctors now are angry with calcium. Calcium, you mustn't take calcium supplements. Have you heard that? Because it's going to calcify your arteries, it's going to calcify your kidneys, and honestly, people talking like that are calcified their brain. Really, it's so stupid. Because if you put magnesium with calcium and vitamin B6, it will not form kidney stones. Kidney stones are telling you you're short of magnesium and vitamin B6. Young ladies, and I mean we all passed this one by decades, remember the period pains? Go to bed with a hot water bottle. They give you painkillers. Why? You make more money out of selling painkillers than telling people to take magnesium. Now the funniest thing with magnesium and heart attacks. What happens when you've got angina? What's this? Crack. What would a homeopath give? And you'll be very pleased to know we have dedicated a section of this book to homeopathy and heart health. And one lady, she's a homeopath. Her father was a dedicated cardiac patient of a doctor. And they both denied her input and her suggestions to the point that he was about to have this coronary artery bypass operation. And again, we're going to expose that myth in a while. That's a fascinating story of its own. It's well documented. The biggest form of bullshit is to rip those blood vessels out and stick them from your leg into there. It's not going to work. People who don't have the op have a 1 in 4 chance of dying. People who've had the op have a 1 in 2 chance of dying. So don't bother. Keep them open. If one of those arteries block, there's a peripheral venous system, arterial system around the heart that immediately takes care of the blood circulation. So a lot of that is just fear talk. Now I've lost my train of thought. Let's get back to the train of thought about magnesium, homeopaths, and heart health. This woman saved her father by stopping him from having the operation, putting him onto homeopathic formulations. And instead of the TNT pills that suck under the tongue, he carried around a simple homeopathic remedy. My favorite was White's Chemist. Magphos, magnesium phosphate. This is one of the best forms of magnesium, guys, the cheapest. And because it's under the tongue, sublingual, directly into the bloodstream. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Keep this in your chest pocket with your cell phone. And if your heart spasms up, take this. Anytime you get cramps in your calves and restless legs, you need magnesium. And the partner of magnesium is potassium. You can't just do the magnesium. Magnesium needs potassium. Otherwise, the electrolytes aren't balanced. Right? Magnesium and calcium, sodium and potassium. But magnesium and potassium control a lot of the fluid levels in your blood. And also the alkaline acidity levels. When it comes to heart health, add the magnesium there, you've got an automatic heart maintenance system of nutrients. It's going to look after the heart, it's going to look after your cells every time there are metabolic processes going on. So what about the vitamin C? Now vitamin C is also a free radical fighter. It also goes around and it can also pick up at a minor level a free radical. But look what happens here. I'll explain the 2 magnets. You've got 2 magnets and there's a free radical. Vitamin C comes along and picks up the free radical. Oh, ow! Now it's deactivated. It can't get the free radical, the free electron off, it's got to give it to someone else, or it's got to get flushed out the body. No, along comes glutathione and it says, let me help you, boy. It takes the free radical off and it deals with it. Now, all these antioxidants in turn take electrons off each other and clean each other up. And there's this wonderful team of the enzyme-based antioxidants and the dietary-based antioxidants. They clean each other up. It's a beautiful thing to know about. Your vitamin E and your vitamin C, they clean each other. And then it goes back into the cycle. So we are just so wonderfully and perfectly made. We just have to understand that it's all there. And if we just set free the basic pathways and clear these bottlenecks, we've got a wonderful system running. But we can't run it without the help of good therapists who also know what's going on. So when you have your homocysteine level checked and it's high, what are you going to do? You've got to come to a group like this where there is support and say, how are we going to lower that? First of all, we need to know to have it checked. And Dr. Evelyn has given me a note here on how to have the test done. It's not cheap. It's about 214 rand, but it could save your life. And it's about how many times cheaper than having a triple bypass. I've got a joke in my book here where it says, you can have 3 for the price of 2 if you have it all done at once. And I know people who've had that done, basically because they've got a magnesium deficiency. The most shocking thing about magnesium is how it relates to insulin resistance. Now, you know, to get type 2 diabetes, you have a stage where the insulin doesn't want to take the glucose and put it into the cell. Right? So you eat the sugar, and the sugar stays in your bloodstream, and you get elevated blood sugar. You've got the insulin, but the insulin isn't picking up the sugar and putting it into the cell. Why? Do you know what insulin needs to function? It's on the board. Magnesium. Now, when you've got insulin resistance and your body's going into a crisis, it has to look after its fluid balance. The body, believe it or not, is very scared of dehydrating. So it's got an antidiuretic hormone, and it's got a system where it retains sodium. You know that evil thing called salt? It retains salt when it feels it's going to dehydrate, or that there's too much glucose in its system. It panics. So when there's not enough magnesium to activate the insulin, it panics. It throws out the very little magnesium you've got, and it starts to store sodium in your body. When you look at the normal blood level, oh madam, your magnesium levels are fine. Your sodium's a bit high, so stop eating salt. Salt is the bad one. Really, without salt you will die quicker than without vitamin C. We need all things in balance. But the main one, when you're diabetic or suspect that you're becoming insulin resistant, is to make sure that the magnesium assists the insulin and it processes the glucose. That's simple. You know, I wrote the whole book and then discovered that, and now I've started rewriting. So I've actually rewritten page 15. I'm very proud of this page, all about homocysteine. All about what I'm telling you now, because it took me a year to find this out. The rest of my book is all about regular investigative processes of the whole cholesterol myth, the whole Banting diet. Where's the logic of it? Where are your antioxidants in that diet? And when you're eating all that fat, what's happening to your magnesium? It's forming clippies in the bowel. All that fiber, the psyllium husks and that, it bonds to calcium, phytic acid, making soaps in your bowel. Luckily, they remove quickly because you're taking so many things that act as a laxative, like psyllium husks. But it's not doing your osteoporosis any good. It doesn't suit everybody. And the main reason that the Atkins or the Banting diet has become so popular is people say, it's working. What about it is working? You're avoiding all the foods that require insulin, that are based on glucose. Okay? So you think you're very clever. I'm eating so well. I'm eating all this cheese and this cream and this butter and oh la la, I can live on biltong. You don't realize what the hell you're doing to your kidneys with all that uric acid. And another thing, you don't realize that you're still making glucose. You're still making sugar. Because every time you get into a rage and all that cortisol is coming into your body, what happens in your body? Up goes your blood sugar. So you may as well have that spoon of sugar and add some magnesium to it. And then it'll go into your cells as energy. But when you release your own glucose endogenously from cortisol stress, you've put your insulin mechanism to sleep when you're on the banting diet. Now what are you going to do? Well, like the inventor of it, you stay on insulin. You take a medication. So where's that got you? So rather, go back to magnesium, go back to B6, 12 folic acid. Now why don't we have the B6? Because women go on to birth control pills, and that wipes out all their B6. Estrogen too doesn't do B6 any good. And although they're good food sources of B6, we don't get enough. I'll prove this to you. Why do you suffer from water retention? Swollen ankles. Some people can't bend their fingers properly. That's a deficiency of vitamin B6. We're not getting enough of the stuff, and that's why we are not making our glutathione. We're not getting the magnesium either. We're getting all the other things, yes. And if you can hit on one single supplement that's going to do the job for you, and take it faithfully, you will get this formula right. But you've got to know your way through this maze. And luckily here, Dr. Evelyn has given me some wonderful products that do contain these key components. But I just want to raconteur you a bit more. Statin drugs. Are we on statin drugs? Not this one. Yeah. But you know what statin drugs do? They destroy coenzyme Q10. They wipe it out. They arrest you halfway with detoxification. They take out your coenzyme Q10. And the other lovely thing they do is they help you to suffer from congestive heart failure. Death results from taking statin drugs. And why did we take statin drugs? To lower cholesterol. And what is wrong with having a high cholesterol level? What's wrong with it? Some people have got high cholesterol levels. They smoke, they drink, they eat far too much. And they're as healthy as ever. And other people are goody two-shoes, what we call orthorexic. And they don't do this and this and this and this. And then they suddenly realize, oh, Patrick Holford said that, but now this one says that. Where do I stand now? And then I get these emails. Sue, I'm taking 100 milligrams of this and this and this. I've got this and this and this on the diet, and I'm doing that and that and that. But I still feel like that and that and that. And now I have to go in for surgery because I'm worried about this little lump and this little bit of piece. You know, really, where do we come from? A lot of it is based on your own anxiety and your own inner fears. And those manifest in the heart. And the heart actually brings it about, orchestrates. Fear of heart attacks. When you put that into your heart, it will attack you, as my friend used to say. He said, don't be angry or my heart will attack you. The heart is listening to all of us. And if you can take home the good news and the simple supplementation protocol, you won't have to worry about any of this. But the whole myth about diabetes and insulin resistance begins with a deficiency of magnesium, like it or not. And if you go to my website and you contact me and you challenge me, I will give you plenty to read. Plenty to read. Another thing that makes people, oh, I've got a bad heart because it's in my genetics, it's in my genes. Oh, really, where? Of course, some people have got different weaknesses and different strengths. Live a life difference. Some people are more prone to diabetes than others. But basically the biggest difference, and you can go and spend 4,000 Rand and go and check your genes of all sizes and shapes. You'll find when you've got a problem like that, it's actually, as Professor Serpentine pointed out to us years ago, that you need more of one nutrient than the other. And some people need a lot more magnesium than others. Some people need more vitamin C than others. You know, half the Caucasians can't make the raw materials in sufficient quantities to actually unlock this equation. And that is a genetic problem. So we're not all going to get there just like that. And that's why some people at 96 can smoke cigarettes with all other people, in the face of other people who are healthy. And they're telling them it's bad. It doesn't affect their heart. It does not. Because their heart is not troubled by it. It's got this system working. But we don't all have an endogenous detox system as good as this. So thank heavens we've got brilliant products. Here's a lovely B complex. Here's the B12. And this is very important, the vitamin B12. Cyanocobalamin. Now you know why they call it the red vitamin? Because it actually is. I brought you a vial of B12 that they inject into you. Often you need a B12 injection just to give you a little perk up. I don't know if you can see this. Put it against the board. Okay, the goobies inside this little vial are red. It's called the red vitamin. You can inject it in, but it's got a very poor what we call a half-life. It's soon going to just bugger off. How do you get more out of this? More money, more bang for your buck, as they call it. You can break it up, and you can get yourself some magnesium tablets. There are stronger ones. Some of them are big. I've mixed up different brands here, but you can get the little magnesium phosphate tablets. And you shake this thing and you mix it up, so that each one gets a drop of the B12. And you suck that together. There you save a lot of money. And you will unlock that formula. The reason most of us are B12 deficient is because we're supposed to make it ourselves. And how do we make B12? In the gut, the colon. You know, the whole gut, the big buzzword these days is biome. You know, the gut biome. Basically just called a habitat. But within there are a lot of bacteria, and they break down all our food. They keep chewing at it and breaking it down, and then they release vitamin B12 back to you. But you're not going to get it if you've got an irritable, leaky gut, or your food balance is wrong. And another big area of discrimination between all of us, and one of the big divides of why we're different, is we have different blood. It's all red, but it's different. And this is where the whole ABO blood typing system comes into play. The blood type A is the perfect probiotic gut flora factory. They've got more bacteria in their guts. So the vitamin, I was going to say the vitamin B group, blood group B, are different in that they get most of the bacteria out of dairy products. They are the dairy grubs. Lactobacillus works in their gut. The blood type O has got the highest amount of alkaline phosphatase. An alkaline phosphatase is a fat-splitting enzyme. So when you want to know why does the Atkins or the Banting diet work so well with certain people, it's going to work especially with blood type O. And especially with blood type O subtype that has a problem with carbohydrates and sugars. They are meat eaters. And I don't care how many people slate the blood type diet and say, oh, it doesn't work. It's like driving a car and not switching on the ignition. Say, oh, this car doesn't work, I'd rather just push it or walk. Blood type technology is heavily linked to cardiovascular disease. The ones most prone genetically to cardiovascular disease because they've got thick, clotty blood. They've got a more tolerant not so aggressive immune system are the blood type A's. But what compensates, it doesn't slam everything out of something. You guys can ferment grains beautifully. You can make more vitamin B12 than anybody else. But blood type A has got thicker blood and they're more inclined to loop on cortisol. And that's just in your genes. Blood type O, good with meat, hunter-gatherers, and they have I think it's a 20% less chance of having cardiovascular disease. So we're different. FYI, if you want to know more about the blood type and why you need to apply it to any diet or any form of aging, have a look at the protocols. It will help you to select food. If you want to know about food allergies, you run through these lists with a kinesiologist and you just check them back. Cost you nothing. You'll find a group of food that is not going to cause inflammation in your body. And so it will help your heart to not be troubled by all the foods, at least. The environment we can check. All the gadgets, we know all those things are bad for the heart. But eating food can cause so much inflammation in your bloodstream that your homocysteine levels will stay high. So those are some of the basics. I can't cover everything because we're running out of time and I think people are starting to fidget and look at their watches. But from here I could go on and on and on. I'd just like to know if anybody would like me to explain anything to them.
Please, could you explain what a free radical is and what this term scavenge means in that context?
Thank you for asking. I'll show you that right away. Now, on the outer surface of a cell, what are free radicals? Are when things come and disrupt the outer skin of a cell. And they cause an imbalance between magnetics. You know, with a magnet you have a positive and a negative charge. Right, so the one will repel and the one will stick. So during the process of being alive, metabolism, toxins, pollutants, you get things that challenge the outer skin of a cell. And they leave a negatively charged electron on the skin, like that. Then the antioxidants that we call free radical scavengers. My husband calls me a dustbin scavenger. So I don't like to see things go to waste, so I'm always collecting garbage and making sculptures out of it. I'm a free radical scavenger. I'm picking up waste material and putting it to good use. But they basically come and they pick off the excess electrons. The other thing I want to mention about cells is you have other toxins and harmful objects sticking to them. Sometimes there's a heavy metal. Now, your amalgam fillings are your worst enemy in terms of cardiovascular health. If you want to know about irregular heartbeat, apart from taking supplements, check out your fillings. Mercury causes irregular heartbeats, trachycardia, arrhythmia, all the big long words. Just take out your fillings and you won't have it anymore. It just goes away. Heavy metals sticking onto cells. Along comes calcium. It's not a scavenger. It's called a chelator. Now I'm going to chelate this piece of heavy metal, and there's a multi-electron sitting there as well. Now why do you take calcium? Calcium is a chelator. What is a chelator? Claws of a crab are like a chelator. So here's a calcium molecule. At night, calcium comes into your blood and it chelates the heavy metal. Right? It's still left a free radical, but it chelates the heavy metal. It takes it into your intestine and out it goes. Unless you're not going to cook this out unless you have sufficient calcium to support your skeleton. If there's a shortage of calcium, the chelated heavy metal will return into your body and it'll go and deposit into your bones. So there you go.
So you should take your calcium at night and not in the morning.
Pardon?
You should take your calcium at night and not
You
in
take
the
your
morning.
calcium at night is very much the best. You take it with magnesium. At night is where all this work goes on. The maintenance is going on at night. It collects all the calcium like that, and it sends it down into the intestine. then the body says, okay, let's balance the books. We need so much more calcium. We didn't get it in today, guys. Some of you have got to go back. And that's how it works. And that explains why children have lead in a tooth next to a filling. A good tooth can actually contain lead because it's gone through this whole chelation process and it was needed back at the bottom floor. That's why we take calcium. And if you don't want to lose too much calcium, you add boron to it. And that then helps you to maintain the calcium. We need all these things all the time. But the magnesium, there are lots of suggestions. This is a very old-fashioned product. It used to be called in our day Phillips milk of magnesia. And you get it in tablet form. One of those tablets will do. One of those tablets will do. And you can also get the B12 and tip that onto that. There are cheap ways of getting more magnesium. Lie in a bath of Epsom salts. Wonderful. You absorb it through your skin. It relaxes. It takes all the cramps out and helps the restless legs. Do we know what restless legs are? You lie in bed and you know that feeling? It's basically part of your circulation. When you move and you walk, your muscles circulate the blood. The heart is too small and too weak to actually pump the blood around. So if you've been told that the heart is a pump, you'd have to have a pump about the size of this area to pump the blood through all your capillaries. That's how much pressure you need. The mechanics of it is phenomenal. So the auxiliary pumps come from your skeletal system, your legs particularly. That's why they say if you've got a weak heart, go for a walk. You're moving your legs. Now if you sit, like most of us do, on a chair, on the internet all day, you're not using your skeletal heart pump. So you lie in bed and your legs start going like this. Why are they going like this? They're just helping to return the venous blood back to the heart. You see, the veins and the arteries are different. The arteries are thick, strong, and they pulse. But the veins they have to rely on a pump, a suction system, a closed suction system. And the legs play a part in returning venous blood. And that's why we get a pooling of venous blood. And the valves start to get a bit soggy. And you get these swellings. That is why you need calcium and magnesium. The doof-doof sound of the heart. It's relaxing and expanding. The calcium makes it tense up, and the magnesium makes it relax. You need the one and the other in proportion.
Can you give us some everyday foods, B6, B12, folic acid and magnesium?
Yes, every day. But what I prefer doing is taking a form. B vitamins wash out every 3 hours. So if you can find it in terry-coated form, here's a tablet that has a multi-stage release. I wish I could get paid for all this advertising. Go look for one that is a multi-stage release. It's more reliable. At the same time, let's look at our diet and see if we can enrich it with all the B vitamins. You all know about good diet. You have a balanced breakfast and your eggs and your cheese and your meat and your vegetables and your pulses. There's enough there. It's just that our gut system is compromised at the moment because we're not breaking down all the B vitamins and putting it back into the blood. So it's good to top up, and we started doing this now. We just take a slow release in the morning and we take some form of magnesium. There's a good choice of magnesium. You can also take these all-in-one part supplements. Easiest way out. And then we've got magnesium citrate, an excellent form of magnesium. And here's a concentrate that is a mineral. I think there's 80 minerals and amino acids and all sorts of things in that. That's also magnesium citrate. And in my book, I've got photos of blood. Now, blood, under a microscope, a blood cell looks something like this. Right? It's got a little donut-shaped structure in the middle. And the reason it doesn't look, my other props over there, the reason it doesn't have a flat surface is to increase the surface area. So it has an indent in the middle to carry more iron. And the dent inside a red blood cell is produced by vitamin B12. So your blood cell would look like this. And when you add the B12, your blood cell looks like this. It's got this extra surface area, and that's the B12. B12, it does that. So I made a little model of a blood cell, and now when you add air to it, it goes like that. Now in the bloodstream, blood cells should bounce around like that. But when your blood is acidic, and you don't have enough magnesium in them, they start to look like this. And they start to stick together. And you see this under the microscope. The Rulu formation will stick together. And they carry magnetic charges. Right, look at that. Sticky blood. The moment you put this, you take some of this, and you measure your blood, and you look at it under the microscope again, you get all these lovely little bouncing things. The last thing I need to tell you now is about Alzheimer's disease before you get it. And I take special note of this. It's got something to do with glucose. Did you know that? Everything that we talked about here has got to do with glucose and a lack of magnesium. You know the HB1BC test the diabetics take? It should be about 4.5. Huh? Anything over that means that your blood cells are collecting a thing called plaque, amyloid plaque. And it looks like this on a blood cell, and it looks like this on your nerve cells or anything else. They're little things that stick. I'm going to just use some of these stickers. I know they're Nature Fresh stickers, it doesn't matter. Plaque. Right. Your blood cells look like this. And a diabetic gets a higher and a higher and a higher level of plaque on their cells. And in the end, they stick. Those are called glycation end products. GEP, we call them in biochemistry. They stick all over things. It's a plaque. How are you going to get that off? And the more that sticks on your brain cells, the more they are disenabled. It becomes like toffee. Dr. McCullough calls it like a toffee apple. That hardens them. It makes your blood cells also more rigid. So you just pluck yourself too. This happens the moment your blood sugar rises above the HB1BC test of 4.5. And most diabetics, you talk to them, what's your blood sugar? Oh, 6, 8, whatever. What are you taking? I'm taking glucophage, metformin, this and that. Do you know what lowers blood sugar automatically and naturally? Uncle Sam. Sammy naturally lowers your blood sugar. That's how I only found out the other day. We're getting clever now. So now I can tell diabetics, do you know what? If you take magnesium, you'll make the insulin work better. And do you know what? If you go through this process, you can get your own blood sugar control. But do you know what? Sometimes I'm talking in the street to a security guard or the gardener or somebody on a bus. How can I explain all this to them? So that's why I leave my website, let them do their homework, and where we live, I just give them products. Now you need methylation as well, a methyl donor. And Sammy is a methyl donor, because it's got a methyl attached to it. There are other methyl donors we use. One of them is MSM. You've got MSM as well. Alright? Methyl sulfonyl. It's a methyl donor. Now there are two ways I lowered my blood sugar accidentally, and I can share these with you because that's what I do with diabetics. I give them this. Take a teaspoon of this powder before a meal. 2 weeks later I say to the guy, how are you doing? Have you been taking glucophage? No, Mrs. Fisser, you know what? I have a spoon of this before a meal, and then I check again. It's fine. Why? I don't know. I took this stuff between a meal once, and I'm on the borderline of hypoglycemic. It's in my genes, I promise you. It's also in my mother's genes. You can't go shopping with my mom when she's got hypoglycemia. She doesn't want to buy anything. So I know I'm on a borderline. that anything can drop my blood sugar too low if I play games with sugar. Took a spoon of this, nearly went into horrible, horrible withdrawal symptoms. The second time it happened to me was when I was taking a supplement called L-glutamine. I just brought you a sample of this. I'm going to pass this around to you, and I'd like you to taste a bit of it. Glutamine in the body, it uses it like MSM, MSG, glutamine. Chinese food, MSG. It comes from mussels. It's extracted from protein. That's why it's called gluta. We have been avoiding glutamine to such an extent that we have to take this L-glutamine supplement. It's got a fairly savory taste. You really get to taste it. It's not sweet. It's called the umami taste. It's got a savory taste. It tastes very nice. But it belongs in food because glutamine or monosodium glutamate, two forms, both come from mussels and protein and from soya, are designed to go with food. And when you have them with food, they excite your taste buds, your pancreas, your stomach, your intestines, all over, get excited by L-glutamine. But I took a teaspoon of this as instructed between a meal, and my blood sugar dropped so low, I nearly went into a coma.
Does it help you to absorb your food?
You need it with food.
Does it help the goodness of the food? Does it help?
What does it help?
You take it with food.
You must take it with food. And the big problem is with the supplements, they say, when you've been training at gym, you've got to replace your muscle tissue and your loss. Take your L-glutamine immediately after you train. And they don't say with food. They say take it on your own because it's an amino acid. And I had to learn that the hard way. It struck me down so low, I'll never forget the lesson. So there is something I suggest to people, if you're battling with the blood sugar, take the glutamate. It costs about 100 Rand a jar. And if you're like me and you really understand your chemistry, you'll just eat Chinese food, soya sauce, anything with MSG in it. It's actually designed to help you digest your food and to lower blood sugar. So now why do all the well-known doctors say MSG is a poison, MSG is a toxin? Because when we look in the brain, we found some MSG stuck in somebody's brain. It's an excitatory chemical. Yes, it is. It excites your digestive system and it belongs in food. What does it do in the brain? Do you know what MSG does in the brain? Monosodium glutamate. It's one of the most important neurotransmitters you've got in your brain. And why do we Greys get forgetful? Because we have the inability to go into our long-term memory. Do you know what neurotransmitter retrieves memory from the long-term brain? Monosodium glutamate. And do you know why it gets stuck in the brain and it becomes an irritant and it's irritating all these children and Woolworths takes it out of food and Pick n Pay takes it out of its food? Because they're listening to myths and legends. Do you know really why it's stuck there? From cortisol. We all push so much cortisol through our systems, especially when you can't remember. Oh, I can't remember this. You're not going to remember it. You're pumping too much cortisol. And that blocks the MSG from the receptor and you can't remember. So there's a nice little cheap trick for you. Push down the cortisol, relax about MSG. I promise you it has not killed anyone, except me, when I took it as an expensive supplement the way they said. It was the only dangerous thing. And that was a health product. It's the same with MSG. You don't have a teaspoon of MSG. Do Chinamen walk around eating a teaspoon of MSG? No, they don't. We lived in China. Their food is delicious. It's digestible. And do you know what? You never suffer from flatulence. Imagine a whole nation that doesn't suffer from flatulence. They're very bright, they're very clever, and they're not only swine. They're obsessed with MSG. So there's another thing. I'm sorry, I'm turning a lot of you around, but I think I have to end this talk now because I'm running out of time.